Welcome to WHRO's Weekly Edition. I'm Jordan Christie.
And I'm Barry Graham.
We highlight the week's news and stories happening all over Hampton Roads. In this week's program, Virginia Beach plans to keep its Spanish dual language program going for middle school students, but the city wants to consolidate it to one location.
Years of fundraising and planning have finally paid off for a Fort Monroe memorial that's planned to commemorate the first African people taken to English North America.
To come to this place in America's history, saying that their prayers were not lost.
And Hampton Roads families struggle to find adequate care for autistic children who grow out of youth programs. We'll hear their stories. It's WHRO's Weekly Edition. In 2019, Norfolk projected it would rake in as much as $33 million a year in tax revenue from a proposed casino. WHRO business and growth reporter Toby Cox says with that project finally underway, the city estimates it'll bring in less than half of that.
Councilmember Tommy Smeagol says the new projection, around $15 million, is still substantial.
Sure, there's an impact on our revenue coming in for us to be able to do things, and now that things have gotten more expensive, yes, that could impact it, but it's still revenue.
Mayor Kenny Alexander and Councilmember J.P. Page agree, but longtime casino critic Butch Bracknell says the people of Norfolk voted in 2020 to approve the casino, expecting a certain level of revenue.
It doesn't legally invalidate the referendum, but it really calls its wisdom into question when the underlying assumption for the referendum turns out to be false.
The casino is expected to be completed in 2027. Toby Cox, WHRO News.
As part of Veterans Day this week, a Virginia author wanted to highlight the issues facing his fellow veterans of the war in Afghanistan. WHRO military reporter Steve Walsh has more on the tribute.
Ross Berghoff says he wants to redefine the service of the roughly 750,000 U.S. veterans who fought in Afghanistan over 20 years.
Veterans Day has become a bit of a solemn day for us. For me, it's a day to reconnect with other veterans. I'll call a buddy that I haven't talked to in a while and check in on him, or I'll get that call that I wasn't expecting. And that's a nice thing.
Berghoff was in the 10th Mountain Division from 2003 to 2007. When the unit took some of the heaviest casualties of the war. He says the war is often defined by its outcome 4 years ago rather than what was accomplished. His book, Beyond the Outpost, debuts today. Steve Walsh, WHRO News.
Over to Virginia Beach, where the city plans to keep its Spanish dual language immersion program going at the middle school level, but with one catch. WHRO's John Doucette reports that they want to consolidate it to one location.
The school board voted to consolidate DLI learning from two middle schools to one location, Virginia Beach Middle School, starting in the 2027-28 school year. Parents had feared the other option meant ending it. In the past, the program had been expected to expand, but the division has faced challenges finding qualified teachers. Alberto McAllis told the board about his own experience coming to the U.S. and learning English as a child. Now he has children learning Spanish in the program. He said it's made a difference for Spanish and English-speaking students.
They don't have to choose between learning and being themselves. And this isn't just about the Spanish-speaking students. The English-speaking children in these same classrooms are gaining just as much.
Superintendent Donald Robertson says the program faces challenges but is valued.
The program is a great program. There's no doubt about that. Zero.
John Doucette, WHRO News.
Now moving up the peninsula, where a surprise discovery was made in historic Jamestown. WHRO's Catherine Hefner reports on the domesticated equines that once lived there.
In the winter of 1609, Jamestown colonists were starving. They ate everything they could get their hands on, including dogs, rats, and officials now say a donkey, which is not listed in official records.
It's kind of a groundbreaking find because it is, in a way, like rewriting that historic record.
That's Leah Stricker with Jamestown Rediscovery. She says the finding comes from a tooth excavated from an old kitchen cellar. Archaeologist William Taylor with the University of Colorado helped trace the donkey's ancestry to the Caribbean or West Africa. Colonists likely picked it up along a supply voyage.
It's a story connecting what we think of as English colonies with other continents, other cultures, and animals that link us to a diverse and complicated network of animal and people that helped shape the world that we're in today.
He says the donkey may be an unsung hero of the famous settlement. Catherine Hafner, WHRO News.
A jury in Virginia has awarded $10 million to a former teacher shot by a 6-year-old student in 2023. WHRO's Toby Cox breaks it down nearly 3 years after the Newport News shooting.
A jury sided with Abby Zwerner's claims that former administrator Ebony Parker ignored multiple warnings that the first grader had a gun. Lead counsel Diane Toscano says the verdict is a step forward in Zwerner's healing.
When the city of Newport News and its schools failed to protect their teachers, students, and citizens, we held them accountable through the courts. Now it's time for the city to ensure Abby receives the justice this verdict represents.
Zwerner was shot in the hand and chest. She spent weeks in the hospital and underwent multiple surgeries. The child's mother was sentenced to prison in 2023 for felony child neglect and federal weapons charges. Toby Cox, WHRO News.
WHRO invited voters across the region to share their thoughts and questions about our state's government. One was curious about Virginia's unique term limit for governor. WHRO's Ryan Murphy has this Virginia civics lesson.
Casey Slaughter was browsing books at Chesapeake's Greenbrier Library one Saturday morning when I asked if she had any questions about how our state's government works.
I didn't know Virginia doesn't do consecutive governor terms. So I am a little curious as to why Virginia doesn't allow consecutive terms. I don't know if that's to prevent, corruption, or if that's to kind of give a new breath of fresh air. So I am curious why Virginia is like that and how many other states are like that as well.
I took Casey's questions to John Dinan. He chairs the Department of Politics and International Affairs at Wake Forest University and literally wrote the book on Virginia's Constitution. He says the limitation dates to the late 1700s and early 1800s. America's founding fathers had just won a war against a tyrannical king and distrusted executive power.
The founding generation was very jealous of protecting the legislator's power from the executive, and so they're putting limits on the governor's terms was meant as a way to limit executive power and preserve a strong legislature.
Legislators were so serious about keeping the reins on the governor that they selected Virginia's executive themselves. That was until a new state constitution in 1851 gave voters a chance to pick the governor directly. That document included the sequential term limit to prevent any one governor from accruing too much power and influence. Dinan says single-term limits were much more common in earlier eras of America. When the state constitution was last redrafted in 1971, Virginia was among 15 states with a one-term restriction.
Since that time, though, all of the other states have eliminated that limit, and so now Virginia stands alone.
The idea of adopting a two-term limit has come up in the General Assembly. Democrats floated the idea when Ralph Northam was in office, and it popped up again just last year. Delegate Tom Garrett, a Republican from Goochland, argued allowing consecutive terms for the governor wouldn't upset the balance of power.
What happens is we get an executive, whether Democrat or Republican, they come into office, they have bold ideas upon which they ran, upon which they were elected, that appeal to your constituents and my constituents. They won. And they're a lame duck the day they get here.
Like other efforts over the last couple decades, Garrett's bill didn't go very far. When creating the 1971 Constitution, though, leaders had a different take than Garrett.
And the former governors who talked with the commission that was drafting the Constitution said, we actually think that having a one-term limit allows us to better do our job without having too many political considerations or electoral considerations over our head.
That input is likely a big reason why the Constitution Commission didn't change the limit then. But Dinan notes that attitude has flipped recently. Governors since the 1990s have signaled they'd like the chance to serve a second consecutive term. Because remember, you're not limited to one term, you just can't serve one after the other, though that's effectively meant the same thing. Governor Terry McAuliffe unsuccessfully ran a second time in 2021, 3 years after his first term ended. However, one person did serve 2 terms as Virginia governor, a man named Mills Godwin. An ardent segregationist,
all measures designed to keep the races separate in our schools.
Godwin won the governor's mansion as part of the famed Byrd Democratic political machine in 1965. Godwin won again as a Republican in 1973 after Richard Nixon's Southern strategy prompted a national realignment of the two major parties. One reason to keep the single-term limit in the modern day, Dinan says it makes for more even elections.
You take away the governor's reelection incumbent advantages and allow the competition to be waged between candidates without regard to incumbent advantage.
He doesn't think the one-term limit is set in stone in Virginia, but it seems unlikely to change anytime soon. Ryan Murphy, WHRO News.
Still ahead on Weekly Edition, an iconic Virginia Beach oceanfront restaurant closed its doors for the final time last week. But first, housing affordability was a top campaign issue for Governor-elect Abigail Spanberger, and legislators have some ideas to address the issue. WVTF's Brad Kuttner spoke to several before they head to Richmond for the 2026 session in January.
Governor-elect Abigail Spanberger is still staying mum on how she'd like to deliver on one of her biggest campaign promises, but her election night speech offered some hints.
We are going to work to lower costs of renting, buying, or staying in your home. We are going to cut red tape and build homes families can actually afford.
The stats for Virginia's housing market are as bad as you think. Property values are up triple digits in some localities, which may be good for sellers, but not for first-time buyers. The cost of construction has gone up, and projects often face years of bureaucratic hurdles before they even break ground. But bills start with legislators in Virginia, so what ideas do they have to fix the problem? Henrico area Democratic Senator Schuyler Van Valkenburg has long pushed zoning reform, which seeks to grow housing by changing how localities permit projects. Among efforts he plans to bring back in 2026 is a carrot and stick bill that he says would incentivize change at the local level.
The locality has the autonomy to figure out the best way to increase supply, but there's some accountability on the state end. They have to try to meet the targets. They have to do some collection of policies to increase supply. But at the end of the day, they get to choose among those assortment of policy areas to get there.
Petersburg area Democratic Senator LaCherice Aird, joined by Newport News Democratic Delegate Sia Price in the House, plans to bring back measures they say will improve life for current renters. Aird said Virginia's eviction rate remains the highest in the nation. Paired with existing low-quality rental units, she said the legislature can address the issue via new requirements on landlords.
We have to do something about the number of, the amount of housing stock that we have, especially in a district like mine that is much older, far more rural, where people are living in subpar conditions, and then they either stop paying or they don't have a housing option at all.
Republicans are in the minority in both chambers, but they're also aware of the state's housing challenges. Delegate Terry Austin pointed to localities that have had success in building housing without legislative intervention. Botetourt County recently added thousands of units closer to Roanoke, and New Kent County, through zoning efforts made years earlier, is now leading the Commonwealth in new housing units. Housing bills should be made public in late December. The new legislative session starts mid-January. In Richmond, I'm Brad Kuttner.
After years of fundraising and planning, Fort Monroe is laying the groundwork for a memorial for the first African people taken to English North America. WHRO's Nick McNamara takes us there.
The sound of drums filled the air, part of an annual African Landing Day commemoration in Hampton. It honors the first African people trafficked to Virginia, landing in 1619 at what's now Fort Monroe. The pivotal event made the site ground zero for the formation of the country's racial hierarchy and divisions, according to late Hampton University historian Bill Wiggins.
This is where it all began, so-called American civilization. For better or worse.
Fort Monroe is working to continue to etch that history into its landscape, with a memorial that will be a central part of future landing days. An idea coming from the advocacy of groups such as Hampton-based Project 1619 Incorporated and its late founder Calvin Pearson, it will serve as a reminder of the slave trade's legacy of pain, and the perseverance of those forced to take the long journey across the Atlantic. For Wanda Tucker, a descendant of two of the first captives who landed there, it will symbolize
the fact that they survived. They endured all of what they did, and to come to this place in America's history, saying that their prayers were not lost. Their prayers were not lost.
Visitors to the memorial site have been greeted by the sound of heavy machinery in recent months, helping with the first major landscape work at the former fort since the Army handed it over to the state. Workers have staged the ground for sculptures by artist Brian Owens. It will be a multi-year installation, closing a stretch of Fenwick Road. Fort Monroe CEO Scott Martin says the closure will make sure the memorial has the intended effect.
Memorials are not something you drive up to, park right next to, and walk into. That doesn't set the human soul to respond to it.
It centers around 3 elements. Owens calls them the arc, the figures, and the relief, with the final piece expected to be in place in 2028. Each piece uses symbolism to tell the story of the 32 people taken from the Ndongo kingdom in what's modern Angola. It builds up to an arrow marked in the pavement, pointing back across the sea to the land they called home. Nick McNamara, WHRO News.
Families raising autistic children say help exists in Hampton Roads, but finding it can feel like a scavenger hunt.
WHRO health reporter Yi-Ching Wang reports it's especially hard for those with kids who have aged out of youth programs.
At a diner in Virginia Beach, David Roberts eats his eggs in quick, restless bites. His fork clatters against the plate. David was first tested at 4 years old. The results showed a high IQ, but his mother, Becky Roberts, says it took more than 2 years and multiple rounds of testing before doctors said the word autism. He stayed home all through grade school because he couldn't tolerate more than 90 minutes of noise or crowds. Roberts still struggles to find steady support and understanding for her son. Her quiet worry lingers whenever she thinks about the future.
He's an only child. There's a lot of concerns about when I'm gone or when I'm not able to help, what's going to happen.
Once kids age out of school programs, many families say the support network drops off. Roberts says her son lost access to the social activities he once relied on, like sensory-friendly movie nights. Now 25, David says he's learned to make a kind of peace with the world on his own terms.
We just want to be left alone in a lot of ways. If you're not going to make the world accommodate for us, just leave us alone. That's the best we can ask for.
For parents like Roberts, worries about the future feel sharper amid renewed political rhetoric, framing autism as a crisis. Health Secretary Robert Kennedy has long promoted unproven claims linking vaccines, and more recently, prenatal Tylenol use to autism. Dana Young Askew, a Virginia Beach mother of 3 autistic sons, says those conversations often do more harm than good.
Parents second guess themselves. I think they start saying, well, did I take Tylenol? Did I take too much Tylenol?
She says what families really need are timely diagnoses, better education support, and more resources once children turn 21, not speculation about what causes autism.
Those are conversations that I feel like are a lot more productive in the space rather than like, we think this may be related somehow because of the mom. Because I think that's an unfair guilt to put on a mother.
Young Askew's oldest son's diagnosis didn't come until elementary school. She says it was a long, uncertain process. So when she saw similar signs in her third son, Drayden, she pushed for testing early. Drayden was diagnosed shortly after his 2nd birthday. Young Askew says early therapy helped him successfully attend school.
He presents very different than someone who may have had a later diagnosis, later services, because he's had years and years of service to where he is very regimented and he has a schedule, and those early interventions really help.
And more kids than ever need that intervention. Federal data show diagnosed autism cases are on the rise in Virginia. The rate nearly tripled between 2012 and 2022, reaching 38 cases per 1,000 children. The Autism Society Tide Order Virginia is often one of the first stops for families looking for help. The group serves nearly 500 families each month. They host parent circles and maintain an online directory with more than 100 local resources. Whitney King says the group's mission is to link families with the resources they need.
So I don't think that there are a lack of resources. I think what's important is for families to hold a conversation so that they understand exactly what resources they're looking for.
But King says it's not just about offering programs. It's about making sure people like Roberts and young Askew can find them when they need them. She says autism resources are often scattered, and navigating them takes time. Yi-Ching Wang, WHRO News.
Rockefeller's restaurant served tourists and locals at the Virginia Beach oceanfront for 37 years. The restaurant closed on November 2nd.
WHO's John Doucette reports its final day brought familiar faces back for one more visit.
A small, crowded kitchen delivers dish after dish that defined an oceanfront institution. Shrimp, crab cake, and of course, oysters Rockefeller. This is the last day of Rockefeller's, a popular spot along Rudy Inlet. It's overlooked the water and drawn tourists and locals since 1989. Owner Elizabeth B.J. Bauman recently announced its closure. It was a hard decision. Frank Bauman, B.J. Bauman's late husband, died a decade after starting Rockefeller's. B.J. Bauman took over. She left a successful career in hotel management to do it.
We had a 1-year-old son at that point, and I had 2 other children from my previous marriage, and there was no way that I could continue with my job in the hotels and with the responsibilities there.
Family is here on this last day, including 2 of Bauman's children and her grandchildren. Her kids grew up here.
I have so many customers that 27 years ago, they were coming in here with small children, and I have watched their families grow.
On the way out, Lakeisha Floyd speaks with Bauman's daughter, Libby Henley.
We had our first date here 16 years ago. It was a booth right there. I remember it. Oh, man. So to be able to be here on the last day with our 2 children, married 11 years later. Full circle. She gave us a special place in Virginia Beach.
Thank you.
Andrew and Carolyn Prickett met while working here. They're married with kids. They came back to say goodbye.
I was pregnant with both of these kids working here, waiting tables at night and hobbling around the restaurant.
Some workers have the next thing lined up. Sean Shania doesn't know what's next. He's been a server for more than 25 years. He wants to let this all settle before he figures out what to do next. He loves the place.
First of all, the food was great. And the people actually that work here. It was, we built, relationship, and we're sort of friends and family, really.
Regulars come in. He walks with them to a table overlooking the water.
Got your window. Good table, right?
Bauman's been a longtime community leader, including in the food and hospitality industries. She led the city's Resort Advisory Commission for years. She wants to do more and spend time with family.
I'm very blessed, and I'm grateful for all of the memories that people have shared with me and the memories that I have.
Shania serves the last table at Rockefeller's. Christian and Giselle Ong are here for the first time. They heard about the place through work.
We need to try their food at least.
They loved it. Now they, too, have a memory here.
The feeling. It's like, it's our first time, and then it's sad that, we can't come back because this is the last day,
The Ongs have a baby on the way, their first. Shania asks about the baby. Giselle Ong says it's a boy. The waiter congratulates them. He leaves them to dessert.
Chocolate eclair, right? Yeah.
Right. Chocolate eclair.
It's good. They share it. John Doucette, WHRO News.
You've been listening to WHRO's Weekly Edition. We had help today from WHRO's Ryan Murphy, Nick McNamara, Catherine Hefner, Steve Walsh, Yi-Ching Wang, John Doucette, and Toby Cox.
And WVTF's Brad Kuttner. Also, Connor Worley, who produced today's show. A reminder that you can always catch full episodes on the Weekly Edition podcast feed.
You can get your news updates at WHRO.org and the WHRO Reports podcast feed. For all of us at WHRO and WHRV, I'm Barry Graham.
And I'm Jordan Christie. Have a great weekend.